How are you doing, everybody? Welcome into the SFS channel. In this episode, I'll be breaking down some of my biggest takeaways and lessons learned from Week 7 NFL action as we move forward to the very end of this week of NFL games and look forward to Week 8 fantasy football. So, of course, if you're new around here, make sure to drop on down, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel here, join the community. We're trying to grow here, of course, help out as many fantasy players as possible, and have a great time while doing so. So, with that being said, not going to waste too much more time. Let's dive into my first takeaway here from Week 7 games. All right, let's dive right into things here. So we're going to take a step backward to Thursday Night Football, Saints-Cardinals here. 2 takeaways from that game today. This is a simple one. We'll make our way through the week here, getting into the Sunday slate games next. But DeAndre Hopkins is back, and he is for real. Now, this was very evident to see after about the first quarter. You're watching that game. You're seeing some rust. You're seeing some, slight miscues between him and Kyler Murray. And then there's kind of that funny little bit where Kyler goes over the sideline and spats a little bit with Cliff Kingsbury. And from there, these guys really got it rolling. In his first game back here, he saw 14 targets. And that's not something that we can rely on every single week here per se. But I think that roughly double-digit targets is something that's very realistic to see here for a guy who is clearly the alpha wide receiver and can't see Hollywood Brown return to the offense anytime before Week 12. So that is big news for DeAndre Hopkins owners. You're going to get a month here or so of premium wide receiver 1 production. Now, will he be the same as your Jamar Chases, your Justin Jeffersons, your Stephon Diggses, your Tyreek Hills of the world? Probably not. This is a player that is in the twilight of his prime here, but the volume numbers and the role that he can play for this offense are still incredibly impactful. And for those of you that swallowed that 6-game suspension or went out and bought low for him, props to you, because you've got yourself a guy who caught 10 passes for 103 yards in game number 1. And if you look back to last year when he played, he was a red zone touchdown magnet. He's still a phenomenal route runner, has spectacular hands, does so many things at a high level. He is still a high-level player in this league. And for anyone that said otherwise, right now, it's not looking like that is going to swing in your favor so much early here. Chris Olave, moving into our second takeaway, our last note from Thursday night's action. Olave here, once again, proved for me that he is amongst the best of the best wide receivers from this past year's draft class, and more importantly, of course, for our purposes, from a fantasy angle. He plays in one of the offenses right now that's produced the greatest level of fantasy viability for a rookie pass catcher because he's consistently getting high levels of work in an offense that, while the Saints might not be a great football team on either side of the ball, they're clearly, their win-loss record shows struggles in that area of pursuit there. However, Olave continues to get open in rhythm. He continues to be separated and in the spots the quarterbacks want him to be. We've played with Jameis Winston this year. We've played with Andy Dalton. We saw that this Thursday night. And he continually has success on a volume basis, productivity levels. He's had his third 13 or more target performance of the season here in Week 7, notching 14. Now he only had a 50% catch rate. But he is commanding targets and looks, and he is a volume magnet for the football here each and every week. I think that for the community of us that's still sitting back and grasping onto the fact that Michael Thomas is an elite fantasy football wide receiver and is the clear-cut number 1 choice in this offense, that seems to be wrong and seems to be something that we need to let go of and forget about moving forward here, because there is nothing holding Olave back from when Jameis Winston returns to having an insane ADOT, to being a guy that leads the league in air yards, to being a guy that checks box after box after box, elite route running, elite athleticism, overall just getting the amount of work it takes to be a viable fantasy option. You're getting all that stuff with Olave here, and again, he's doing it at a level that you're not seeing many rookie players from this class, despite a star-studded unit coming forward here in 2022. He is doing things a little bit differently than other players are right now. Travis Etienne, moving into our third takeaway from this week. He has taken over this Jags backfield. Now, I'll be up front. I do not have the specific snap count percentages yet. Those numbers, I didn't chart it myself. I guess I'll put it that way. So the data that I wait for comes out Monday mornings. I'll have that information after this video is posted. If you guys are curious about it, just put that in the comment section below, and I will reply back to your comment. I might even pin it as well, so I can include that information. However, with that snap count percentage comes the fact that James Robinson had his first touchless game of the season. He had one target that resulted in an incomplete pass. So for Etienne, we've had the warning signs and kind of the writing has been on the wall here, and I've been hesitant to really say the takeover is in full swing here. But now this week, the work distribution is so telling to what Etienne is in this offense and what he represents going forward. He notched his third consecutive game of 7 or more yards per carry in a row. So he's been at 7.1, started back 3 games ago. Then he goes 8.6, and in this game, 8.15 yards per carry. That is elite efficiency. Ripped another 50-yard run this week. Scored his first touchdown of his NFL career here in the regular season. Scored a 2-point conversion as well. And he had 5 opportunities, 5 targets in the passing game. Only hauled in one of those for a reception. However, my feeling on this is Doug Peterson wanted to start him slow early, get him worked into this offense, get his legs underneath him, and now it's cut the ties loose here and rolling Travis Etienne the rest of the way. Joe Burrow here representing our fourth takeaway this week, that the Bengals' offensive hangover is officially and utterly over. There are no question marks left for me. There was concerns. Offensive line play was absolutely atrocious. Like, it was just really hard to watch this team. The body language was getting frustrating, all that stuff. And they've really tapped into themselves here, come back a stronger unit, and they look like that Super Bowl team from down the stretch. This might just be a slow starting group, and they really got into a groove here. Joe Burrow has the most points among the quarterback position now. Some of this helps that Josh Allen was on bye this week. But the simple matter of fact is that he has the most points at the quarterback position since week 2, and this week he put up a 30-plus point fantasy game. If you guys have like boosts and additional scoring incentives for big plays, Joe Burrow is in the 40s in your leagues, and depending on the levels of quarterback scoring you have, could have went even higher. So he's doing ridiculous things right now. I saw one of the plays that just baffled me to a great extent, but was awesome for fantasy owners, where A, his scrambling touchdown, and B, there was like a 3rd and 4 situation late in the second half where they called a design quarterback draw, and Joe just takes off and makes a huge play. So between these weapons, you saw all 3 of them locked in. T. Higgins went for almost 100 yards. Tyler Boyd was, until Jamar Chase went crazy in the middle portion of this game, the star of the show here. And then Jamar Chase did Jamar Chase things. Now, I just about pooped my pants when I saw Jamar Chase laying on the turf. That would have been another devastating injury that we'll talk more about some of those other instances later today. But had he went down, I would have been absolutely devastated. Hate to see that stuff. And for players like Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, who have this great coexistent relationship in terms of how it relates to each other's fantasy success, it just being an elite, dynamic duo there. Didn't want to see that, but he came back and made more of an impact on that game. So for the Bengals offense, I am not worried one bit. For Joe Mixon owners, I think this continues to be a positive thing for you. I know that he's still not giving you elite level, week winning, difference making performances, but he is still on the cusp of being a fringe level running back one. The opportunities have been consistently there. It hasn't been an every week thing, and the extent of it actually relating to, like I said, premium RB1 levels of production. But do not panic. I'm still extremely confident in what he represents in lineups moving forward. Tom Brady, on the other hand, this is an offense where my note for this week is that my panic level and level of concern is definitely rising for this group. The inefficiency is definitely attention getting here when you take a look at a 0 touchdown performance and a 21-3 loss against the Carolina Panthers that basically mailed in their season, trading away their wide receiver to Robbie Anderson, which, whoop-de-doo, big deal, and their best player on their entire football team, Christian McCaffrey, to the 49ers this past week. You go out, you were favored by 13 points, and you lose by greater than that margin. You lost by 18. So that in itself is troubling and concerning. Even garbage time wasn't enough to salvage Tom Brady any trips to the end zone, any viability in fantasy. You did have a decent game from Mike Evans, and Chris Godwin had a mediocre floor. It still wasn't even that good, despite the fact that he had, I think it was 13 or 14 targets here. So if we take a look at this offense, he had 49 freaking pass attempts. He's had 5 straight games with 42 or more passing attempts, but they're so inefficient. TB12 as a quarterback has just 2 15-point or higher totals, and that's just not cutting it, not getting the job done at the end of the day. So definitely keeping my eye on this as a bit of a more troubling and puzzling situation as we move into week 8. Halfway through today's episode, moving into number 6 now, Chuba Hubbard and D'Onta Foreman. So if I could put two players up on the screen at once, kind of coexisting here in this idea of thought here, and that's that you simply cannot overlook or underestimate the starting running back for any NFL team. With the positional scarcity that we have here, each of these players are so critically and crucially valuable to their respective offenses, and even if they're not solidified workhorses or the most talented players, or schematically they're not a perfect fit, you need to get your hands on as many of these pieces as you possibly can, especially when they're just sitting there to be had on the waiver wire. So one of the interesting things about the dynamic of this McCaffrey trade is that there had only been one game played for the week on Thursday night, with Alvin Kamara and then Benjamin and company for the Cardinals being the two running backs who played on Thursday night. Aside from that, everyone on your whole roster was fair game to drop to add up either D'Onta Foreman or Chuba Hubbard here, yet neither of them were owned in even 50% of leagues as we entered and now exit Sunday's slate of games. So that needs to change. I get it that not everyone wants to make that decision on the fly, and maybe you're questioning their level of impact right away here. It was a tough matchup. It's a bad offense. It's a bad team. You don't think either of them are going to have success, and yet they come out and both of them do. Chuba's dealing with a minor ankle sprain. It sounds like he'll be okay, though. So keep these names in the back of your mind here. Go check out our waiver wire episode as well if you're looking for some more stuff from the channel here. But the moral of the story here is, if you had the opportunity to add even one of these players, if not both of them, depending on your league size and format, unless you're in an 8-man or smaller league, these are players that need to be rostered in assets that need to be utilized in some manner across your leagues. Last up before a short break, we've got Josh Jacobs here, and the fact that he simply looks like a league winner right now. I was too low on Josh Jacobs. I was a little bit higher on him than consensus was. But right now, this is a player who, like I said, is playing like a league-winning fantasy football running back. He has 3 straight consecutive games of 27 or more points in half PPR scoring. He's having his best statistical season of his career, averaging 5 yards per carry or more, which as a previous seasons past Josh Jacobs hater and slammer here on the channel, I've bashed his inefficiency. I've bashed his pass-catching utilization. All of those numbers are up. Like I said, his yards per carry has typically been very, very close to the league average bare minimum of 4 yards per carry. Like I said, this year, 5 out of 6 times he's been 5 yards per carry or better. His pass level of involvement has increased as well. And as I said, 20-plus point games, 3 straight week here. That's actually 27 points or more, again, for half PPR. And for a guy that was a 6th-round dead zone running back pick this season, he's absolutely going out there and crushing it. He is absolutely killing it. And he was the RB7 entering into this game coming off of a week 6 bye. So definitely interesting stuff to evaluate. And obviously, as this season continues to progress here, evaluate things going forward. See where we were wrong, where we missed types of things and like that, or different types of stuff and whatnot. So definitely the Josh Jacobs unicorn situation here for a really strong, skillful, well-rounded player is something we'll keep our eye on for 2023 and beyond. Before we get into our takeaway about the Atlanta Falcons offense, if you guys are enjoying today's episode, it'd mean a lot to me if you'd smash that subscribe button. As always, give a like for today's episode as well. Turn the bell on so you're never late for a new piece of content. And check out some of the links we have in the description of today's episode. One of those links being to Underdog Fantasy, one of our great partners on the channel here. When you guys sign up for Underdog, there's a link in the description of today's episode, and use code SFS. You can deposit $10 or more, and they will match your money up to $100. So if you put $10 in, you'll get $20 to play with. $100 get you $200 to play with for in-game props, or I guess you can't really do in-game props, but set your props pre-game here. Pick over or under for different lines and numeric values for a certain player's fantasy matchups. You can do different best ball drafts for different sports. And then, of course, they have in-game slates for Sunday afternoons if you want to play a game with some random people. Join or pick your entry fee, and you can compete with other players for just 1 week of fantasy action and have a super fun time with that. It's a half PPR scoring format. I love Underdog. Everything about that's great. When you guys sign up using my code, you're going to get access to my DMs on our community Discord server to ask me any of your questions you have at any point in time about your teams in your leagues. It doesn't matter if you have one league or if you got 10 of them. I'll answer your questions when you use code SFS. They get in contact with me every single day, so I find out about that in a 48-hour turnaround or less. And then we've also got the fact that you'll get access to my weekly positional rankings on my website, sizzlefantasy.com, as a thank you for signing up and using code SFS on Underdog. So you'll get access to all that stuff again when you use the code, when you check them out. Highly recommend it. It is definitely my favorite platform to play daily fantasy on, to do prop bets, to do those in-season drafts and whatnot. They actually just did a revamped best ball that's week 6 through 18 here, so you could redraft your team. If your team's totally sucked, you could reinvest yourself into the lessons you've learned to the first third of the season and stuff like that moving forward. So super, super fun stuff. Check out Underdog. Next up here, number 8, the Atlanta Falcons do not have capable pass catchers from a fantasy perspective. I shouldn't just say it bluntly like that. They are unstartable. The pass catchers, namely Kyle Pitts and Drake London, the guys that we want to play well, are unstartable. And the reason for that is because of the man up on the screen right now, Marcus Mariota. He attempted 13 passes this week. 13. The Atlanta Falcons trailed by 10 or more points, double digits, for 50 minutes of this game. That is the reason that these guys aren't doing anything. Despite the fact that the game script got so bad, the game script didn't impact play calling. They didn't change offensively to focus and attack different points of the defense here because they know they don't want Marcus Mariota throwing the football. And that sucks for us as fantasy owners because as talented and skillful and capable as Drake London and Kyle Pitts are, their quarterback just isn't sustaining, or their coaching staff's trust level in said quarterback isn't sustaining the ability for them to call plays to enable their success on a statistical level, which is the most important factor here for us at fantasy or in fantasy leagues and whatnot. So for Mariota, a guy who this team is actually 13-0, or they 13-0. They were 3-0. Now they are 3-1, entering into week 8 now in the future here. When Mariota completes 13 or fewer passes, now they only attempted 13 this week and lost the game. I think that number needs to go up here, and I hope that it will. But for now, Drake London has gotten worse as the season has progressed here, and Kyle Pitts continues to be incredibly frustrating despite the fact that he might be the most talented and skillful tight end at his position in this league. So insane stuff to think about there, but that really is the reality of today's situation in Atlanta. Melvin Gordon here. This takeaway is simply that I do not think at this point in time that he's nearly the handcuff running back that we thought he was when Javonte Williams went down with his ACL injury. Now, the reasoning for this is, once again, it's a coaching thing. You saw the frustration he had in week 6 without really being utilized, 16% snap share for Melvin in week 6. Week 7, he comes in, says he talked with Coach Nathaniel Hackett, or vice versa, rather, and it sounds like it's, they're on the same page. They're good. He's going to start this week. He's going to see the bulk of the carries here, and then boom. He does see the majority of the volume, but he still has just a 50% opportunity share of the running back room here and only had 3 yards per carry. So Latavius Murray got the nod on the goal line for a touchdown. He made the most of that look and opportunity, and it seems like things just aren't going to line up in a way for Melvin Gordon to really be the top 24 running back we hoped he could be post-Javonte injury. So it stinks for those teams that went out there and drafted Melvin Gordon hoping he could be that level of player in relief of Javonte if that situation arose, which inevitably it did here. And that, like I said, it sucks because you're looking at really a realistic RB3, a low-end flex player, someone that just isn't delivering much. And with the low offensive output of Denver here, and the fact that you've got a banged-up Russell Wilson in there, or a really incompetent Brett Rippon right now. By the way, just while talking about poor quarterback play, if you guys watched Brock Purdy for the 49ers this week after they sat their starters when they were trailing late in the game, that was some of the worst quarterback play I've ever seen. But regardless, unfortunate things for Melvin Gordon owners here. I do think that you're getting vultured a bit from Mike Boone as well. So it's more of a committee than it is really turning to the next man up here. And then last but not least, this is our saddest. I hate to end on a sad note, but we're going to do it today. In this episode at least. Go check out the waiver wire episode so you can find some solutions to this stuff and have a little bit more of an optimistic outlook on your teams entering into the midway mark of the season for most teams, or getting very close to that point. Breece Hall representing our final takeaway, that injuries happen and we need to be prepared for them. Now, this is not a take for me arguing that you need to go out there and play scared or conservative fantasy football, that you need to handcuff every single one of your running backs and be that guy that's just overly cautious and totally shoots himself in the foot and kills all of their upside. This is more so a take that in the trade market and the advice that I guys give to you in that platform. This is the reason why I'm so pessimistic and skeptical about making these mega deals where you just fork over your whole level of bench depth a quarter or a third of the way into the season, not knowing what your team is going to look like from a health-based perspective in the next couple of weeks. Breece Hall looked like he could be in the conversation to be the RB1 this year. Like, he was on track, ripping a 60-plus yard touchdown run early in this game and getting injured after having 4 carries. He looked like he could have been on his way to his best game this season. And that isn't surprising to me. It's not shocking. This is a player who is pound for pound, his build overall in an ascending offense. He's a workhorse, and everything about him screamed that. And he was one of the steals of the draft in the 3rd round. But with him going down this week and looking at just recent injuries between him and Javonte Williams, and by the way, before I oversimplify things here, it sounds like Breece has an ACL injury and is going to miss the rest of the season. So that's kind of where this stems from, in case you weren't aware of that. We've lost Breece Hall and Javonte Williams to ACL injuries. I had a lot of teams where I had both of these players on the same roster. Hollywood Brown, down last week. DK Metcalf got carted off the field with a knee injury this week. Mike Williams looked like he suffered pretty bad ankle injury this week. These things happen, and you have to be ready for them. I know it's tempting to make humongous deals, and like I said, I'm not trying to advise you to play scared fantasy football, but this is something you need to at least think about and have a part of your thought process when approaching these types of situations in the trade market, particularly, again, is where this advice is pointed towards, because you can really get yourself in an ugly scenario if you don't have Michael Carter. And even in that case, like I'm saying, you want to be drafting an overall roster of teams, filled with players that give you the best chance to win on an upside basis. And over the course of the season, you think give you the best opportunity for use cases in their offenses. And, maybe always the answer is not a handcuff. It's just simply drafting the best player available. But if you don't keep your best players available, I guess is the takeaway here, you're looking pretty grim right now. And with the waivers getting more and more sparse every week, we do have some really good options that popped up this week that we're going to be talking about. So one more time, I'll plug that video for a 5th and final time here today. But lots of stuff to think about, and there's a lot of moving pieces to fantasy football. So just not wanting to oversimplify that process and whatnot. So I had a lot of fun talking through my 10 takeaways for this week. As always, if you guys had any other takeaways, Sunday Night Football, I'm recording this during halftime, so we haven't seen the finale of that game yet. So let me know any of your guys' takeaways, stuff you want to talk about with me in the comment section below. I'm always here. I'm an open book. I got super busy last week, and a bunch of bad stuff came up that I had to deal with. So I apologize for not being as good about comments and overall responses as I usually am here, but you guys are a priority. I'm here to help you guys. It is, at the end of the day, the reason I do this. I love to have fantasy conversations and talk through that stuff with you guys. So I will see you in a future episode, or in the comment section below, or in the community Discord server. By the way, there's a link down there. You can go check that out, and I will see you there. Peace out.